Imagine for a moment that you are standing in front of a man who has everything under control: his job, his routine, his relationship. Everything seems to be in order, but there is something in him that remains untouched, almost inaccessible, his deepest emotional world. And even though he doesn't say it, you can feel it. There is a wall, a space that hasn't been reached until someone appears and disarms him without even trying. It wasn't a kiss, it wasn't a promise, it was something subtle, a gesture, a glance, an energy that couldn't be explained. And from that moment, something inside him began to shift, something no one had ever managed before, something he himself didn't even realize he needed. Carl Jung said that the human soul doesn't fall in love with the obvious but with the symbolic. It doesn't seek certainty, it seeks mirrors. And many times, what ignites that quiet fire inside a man has no form or name. It's vibration. It's a frequency that touches exactly where he thought nothing remained. Have you ever feel like you touched someone's soul without even trying? Were you surprised by how deeply someone remembered you, even without having shared anything intense? If something like that has happened to you, share it in the comments. That story might be more meaningful than you think. The interesting thing is that when a man is affected by such an experience, he doesn't always show it. Sometimes he even distances himself, becomes more rational, seeks refuge in the familiar. But that doesn't mean he wasn't touched. It means he doesn't know what to do with that, what he has felt. Because what moved him wasn't something he could control. It was an emotion that didn't ask for permission, a feeling that didn't fit into his mental framework. And that's a key. The masculine soul doesn't open up to logic, but to what confronts it with itself, with its emptiness, its repressed desires, its need for real connection. And that connection doesn't arise from what a woman says or does, it arises from what she represents, even without knowing it. When a woman is at peace with herself, when she is not seeking approval, when she vibrates from her truth, her presence becomes a kind of silent language, one that the male unconscious immediately recognizes, even if the mind denies it. In that moment, he doesn't fall in love with the person, he falls in love with the symbol, with the unconscious promise of something he has been searching for but didn't know how to name. When Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, he referred to those shared memories we all carry within us, even if we haven't lived them consciously. And in a man's heart, there often reside feminine images that have accompanied him since childhood: the mother, the caretaker, the muse, the savior, figures that shape his emotional imagination and that he later projects onto the woman he meets. But there is one figure that goes beyond all of these. It's what Jung called the enema, an inner representation of the feminine that is not defined by roles but by energy. And when a man meets a woman who, without knowing it, embodies that archetype, something is ignite in his soul. It's not desire, it's not need, it's something deeper. It's as if suddenly he saw himself reflected in a mirror he had never dared to look into. And the curious thing is that this woman often isn't making any effort. She is not trying to seduce, not chasing, not asking to be chosen. She is simply being, she is inhabiting herself. And that kind of authenticity, so rare, so disruptive, so precisely what confronts him because he can't dominate it, he can't predict it, he can't fit it into any familiar category. That's when the confusion begins because his mind tries to explain it, rationalize it, force it into old frameworks. But the soul doesn't work like that. The soul doesn't move by logic, it moves by resonance. And when a woman vibrates from her truth, it's not her who touches the man, it's her truth that calls to him. Have you ever felt that someone was deeply drawn to you for no apparent reason? That you seemed to represent something even you didn't fully understand, right? I would love to read your story in the comments because those kind of experiences reveal just how powerful silent authenticity can be. So please share it. The problem begins when that attraction becomes uncomfortable because he doesn't know how to deal with that, what he is feeling. He is not prepared to be so exposed, so insecure, because what's being triggered inside him isn't just a fleeting emotion, it's a call to his own transformation. And this is where many relationships break before they even begin because the woman doesn't understand why he pulls away just when everything seems to be going well. And he doesn't understand either why he can't stay, why something inside him pushes him to run. But what's really happening is that his inner world has been touched in a way he has never experienced before. And that, even if he doesn't know it, is the beginning of something much bigger, the beginning of awakening. On the surface, it might seem like he moved on with his life, that nothing happened. That is was just another encounter. What the truth is, his unconscious has been marked not by the memory of just any woman, but by what she symbolized. Because it wasn't her beauty that captivated him, nor her words or gesture, it was the way she made him, without saying a word, look inward. Carl Jung said that we are not what we show, but what we repress, and often what a man represses is precisely his need to feel insecure, to surrender, to stop controlling. That's why when a woman appears who doesn't demand, doesn't beg, doesn't need to prove anything, he doesn't know what to do because she doesn't represent a role in his life. She represents a portal to his shadow. And in that shadow lies everything he has denied about himself, his fragility, his tenderness, his fear of abandonment, his deep desire to be truly loved. And of course that's terrifying because no one taught him how to navigate those waters, and no one ever told that love is not a power struggle but a sacred space for transformation. So what does he do? He protects himself, he pulls away. He convinces himself that it wasn't that deep. And he seeks comfort in the familiar, in the predictable. But at night, when silence falls and there is no mask left to hold, she returns. Not her image, but her presence, that feeling he can't explain, but that remains alive, beating like a song he can't forget. And there begins an invisible but irresistible process. His unconscious begins to work to remind him that there was something in that woman that was not ordinary, something that wasn't about possession, but about reflection. Because she wasn't offering him a relationship, she was offering him an opportunity. And he, without knowing it, let her go. Has it ever happened to you that someone distanced themselves from you without a clear reason? only to come back later as if they understood something too late. If it has, I would love for you to share your story in the comments, because sometimes those departures are not rejections, they are pauses to understand. And that understanding doesn't come easy. It takes time, silence, and honesty. But when he finally begins to see clearly, nothing is ever the same, because now he knows that what moved him wasn't her as a person, but she revealed to him about himself. And that kind of imprint doesn't fade. There comes a stage when he starts looking for her in others, he doesn't admit it. Maybe he doesn't even realize it, but something inside him compares, remembers, projects, and no one else is like her. Because what he is searching for is not a person, it's a sensation, that serene presence, that emotional freedom, that way of simply being without invading, of loving without asking, that marked him without marking a sound. And that's when the subtle obsession began. Not with her, but with what he lost when she left. Because deep down, he knows that with her, he didn't just lose a relationship, he lost a chance to heal through connection. And now everything feels emptier, more superficial, because no one else awakens in him what she did. And that doesn't let him rest. Carl Jung believed that what we deny within ourselves because our destiny, and what that man is denying is not the memory of her, but what she activated in him. That's why he keeps seeing her in the gestures of others, in certain words, in certain silences, not because she is present, but because her imprint continues to vibrate in his conscious, like a living symbol. And the more he denies it, the stronger it becomes. Then comes the impulse to go back, to find her, to recover what he lost. But what he wants isn't her, it's what he felt when he was with her. It's the version of himself that only existed in her presence, a freer, more insecure, more real version. But that version doesn't depend on her, it depends on his willingness to look within. Has someone ever come back to you saying they couldn't forget you, but without being able to explain why? Did they seek you with their body, but without having done the soul's work? If something like that happened to you, share it with us, because many times we believe it's love when in reality it's avoidance. Because in order for that man to truly love, it's not enough for him to want to feel again. He has to dare to integrate, to recognize that what she represented was a mirror of his dormant self, and that this part can no longer be ignored. At that point, if he has the courage, the journey begins, a journey inward. He no longer chases the woman, no longer blames her, no longer tries to possess her. Now he asks himself, what part of me was awakened in her presence? What wound was exposed? What truth did she show me in her silence? And that questioning, though it hurts, is that first step toward transformation, because he is no longer trying to fill a void, he is trying to understand it. And in that search, without realizing it, this process of individualization begins. At this stage, he is no longer running, something inside him has changed. He pauses, observes, allows himself to feel what he has avoided for so long. And even if he still doesn't know how to heal, at least he is no longer denying himself. That's already a massive step. Because true transformation doesn't happen when everything is understood, it happens when we stop running. Carl Jung said that the process of individualization begins when the self confronts the unconscious and recognizes that wholeness is not found outside, but in the integration of the fragmented parts of the soul. Often that integration begins with a loss, an absence that cannot be replaced. A woman who, without trying, left behind light instead of emptiness. He remembers moments, things she said, things she didn't say, simple gestures that now seem to mean so much more. And he realizes that for the first time, someone truly saw him, not for what he appeared to be, not for his success, his strength, his charisma, but for who he really was beneath it all. And that disarmed him because in a world where so many men have learned to protect themselves behind masks, being deeply seen is almost unbearable. It's like being naked in front of the another soul, and yet it's also what they have longed for the most. Have you ever felt that someone was exposed just by your gaze? That without saying anything, you made someone face themselves? If something like that happened in your life, please try to recall it, understand it, because sometimes we don't realize the power we carry in our soul until someone reflects it back to us, and this is where he begins to understand it's not her he needs to recover, it is his connection with himself. She was the beginning, the trigger, the breaking point, but the task now is internal, it's his. He stops looking for someone to blame, stops hoping for the past will return, and slowly begin asking himself new questions. Who am I without my defenses? What part of me have I never allowed to come to light? How can I be whole man without trying to fill my emptiness with fleeting connections? And that honesty begins to change him. Maybe he doesn't yet know how to love differently. Maybe he still stumbles, but he no longer loves from need, he no longer seeks from lack. He is learning to be with himself, to choose himself, to listen to himself. And in that silence, she is still there, not as absence, but as symbol, a symbol of what he was once capable of feeling and now finally allows himself to understand. With time, something begins to settle inside him. There is no longer so much urgency, no more noise. The anxiety of needing to understand everything slowly fades, and in its place, a new kind of calm begins to emerge. Not because it's no longer hurts, because now the pain makes sense. It's no longer an open wound. It's a sign that something is being rebuilt from within. And in that reconstruction, he no longer tries to replace. He begins to integrate, to understand that true love wasn't what he lost, it was what he was capable of awakening. Because now he understands that it wasn't her who saved him, it was what she reflected that made him want to save himself. Jung said we don't fall in love with people but with the qualities of our soul that we see reflected in them, and that's exactly what happened. He didn't love her body, her smile, or her intelligence. He loved her freedom, her groundiness, her authenticity, qualities he longed for but didn't know how to develop within himself. That's why it hurt so much, because she was a reminder of everything he wasn't yet, but could become. And here something beautiful happens. He no longer wants her to come back, not because he forgot her, but because he understood that her role in his life had already been fulfilled. She wasn't an ending, she was a beginning, a threshold that led him to his own soul. Have you ever felt that someone passed through your life just to awaken you and then disappeared? A brief but transformative presence. Your story might be the reflection someone else needs to understand their own process. And so, in the midst of all the internal movement, he begins to live differently. He no longer acts from fear, no longer loves from a piece of needing to be accepted. Now he observes himself, cares for himself, allows himself to be vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, he finds his true power. Because to love is not to control, not to hold on, not to convince someone to stay. To love is to fully inhabit yourself and share that with someone who has also done the work within themselves. And that changes everything. He begins to relate from a new place, more honest, more serene, more human. And even though she is no longer there, her energy remains not as a shadow but as a guide. Because what she left behind wasn't emptiness, it was a new way of seeing life, a way that doesn't seek possession but connection, a way that doesn't demand but flows, a love that doesn't feed on the fear of loss but on the freedom to share. At this point, he has stopped fighting within himself. He no longer blames himself for what he didn't understand before. He no longer pushes or punishes himself for not knowing how to love the way he could now. He has reached a deep understanding. Love isn't about being perfect, it's about being conscious, and that awareness, even if it comes late, has changed him forever. Carl Jung said that what we accept about ourselves transforms us. And that's what is happening. He has begun to accept his shadows, his emptiness, his contradictions. He no longer hides them, he embraces them. And by doing so, he becomes more human, more whole, more capable of truly loving. Now he can clearly see what he couldn't before. That woman wasn't some unattainable ideal. She was a real woman who simply loved herself enough not to stay where she wasn't seen. And it was that self love, that silent act of dignity, that left an unforgettable mark. Because in a world where many people confuse love with sacrifice, she represented something revolutionary. The right to leave where staying would mean betraying herself. And though it hurt at the time, now he honors it. Have you ever experienced your silence, your departure, your decision not to insist being misunderstood? Were you made to feel guilty for choosing yourself? It might give strength to someone who is now facing a similar decision. He now sees that his transformation wouldn't have been possible if she hadn't insisted, if she had stayed, if she had begged for love. It was precisely her departure that ignited the inner fire of his change. Because no one can awaken without first being shaken, and that shake was love, a silent, steady, authentic love. A love that didn't need dramatic words or intense scenes, just a door quietly closing, a gentle no more that didn't come from pride but from self respect. That gesture transformed him more than any promise ever could, because in that act he finally saw what he had never understood before, that the deepest kind of love isn't demanded, it's honored. So his way of loving changed. He no longer tries to impress, no longer needs control. Now he wants to share his truth, even it's imperfect. In that imperfection, he has become more real, even if he never says it, even if she never finds out. There lies within him a deep gratitude because she wasn't the wound, she was the key, the one that opened the door to a new version of himself. Today, when he remembers her, it's no longer hurts the same. There are no more unanswered questions, no more anxiety about closure. There is something else, something calmer, something cleaner. It's as if he can finally look at that bond not from a place of lack, but from a place of gratitude. Because she wasn't a mistake, she was a message, a spark, a teacher who didn't need to use words because her very presence was already a revelation. Carl Jung said that the great encounters in life don't happen by chance, but because the soul needs them in order to evolve. That encounter with her, through brief, though strange, though perhaps incomplete, was perfect because it marked a before and after in his inner story. He no longer searches for that woman in others, no longer projects her onto new faces. Now he carries her within as a symbol, as a compass, as a presence that without staying brought him back to his essence. That is the deepest form of true love. When it doesn't bind you, when it doesn't dominate you, when it doesn't condition you, but instead reveals you, transforms you, reminds you of who you are and who you can become. Maybe you watching this were that woman, the one who touched someone's soul without even trying, the one who left quietly but left behind an echo that never faded, the one who with dignity showed the way in word and felt misunderstood, confused, or even rejected. But maybe today you will understand you weren't forgotten, you weren't inte- ignored, you were integrated, and that's a powerful sign. Or maybe you are the man who is going through a late awakening, who is beginning to understand that what he lost wasn't just a relationship, but an opportunity to find himself again. And if that's the case, let this message be your lighthouse because it doesn't matter how late awareness arrives, it always comes at the right time when the soul is ready. Now I ask you, with my heart in hand, have you ever felt that your energy transformed someone even without realizing it? Were you that presence that shook him, even if he couldn't explain it? Or were you that man who began to awaken after the loss? Please share with me. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. If this content touched you something inside you, please share. Thank you.